We're ready. I am yours truly, Dr. Pierre, favorite board certified internist. You are back for another episode of the Real Physician Reacts. This is our live stream that we do here on TikTok, and we blast it to other places later on in the week. And today we are going to be talking about how the environment is trying to kill us. Now, of course, that's a very fancy title on a subject that's actually extremely important, especially as a physician who has done outpatient medicine, who does inpatient medicine, understanding that a lot of times in the front lines when it comes to environmental concerns affecting your health, it's important for the physician to kind of recognize, hey, is this something I need to worry about? So I want to let's give some context, right? Unless you been avoiding TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all news, you know that within the past few weeks, we have not had one, but two train derailments in this country. The first one was in Ohio, a little town by East Palestine, Ohio. I want to make sure I got that correct. On February 3rd, and it ended up in having 50 cars being derailed. And obviously, being a train being derailed is exciting news, as long as no one's hurt, which thankfully, right, that hasn't been the case yet. But what occurred afterward is where the problem lies, right? So we have a train derailment go down on February 3rd. Within all of those 50 cars, there are chemicals being seeped out to the air, being seeped out to the soil, being seeped out to the water. So bad that it got to the point that the government had to say, you know what? Like, we need y'all, the city, that town, to evacuate. Now, I wish I could say that the train derailment happened on the 3rd and they had to evacuate on the 3rd, but unfortunately, the trail derailment happened on the 3rd. They weren't given the okay, or let's say the soundboard to say, hey, get up out of there 3 days later. So that's crazy, right? So 3 days later, on the 6th, they were saying, hey, evacuate, get out of there. There are too many things, too many chemicals and issues going on that needs to be addressed, needs to be taken care of. Fortunately, they were able to get back 3 days later when it was deemed that everything was safe. But like, that is kind of the crux of it. And then as I speak today, less than 24 hours ago, near Detroit, Michigan, another trail derailment occurred. Another issue and concern of environmental chemicals that may or may not get into that area. Now, they haven't talked about evacuation or anything at this time. But remember, the first trail derailment that happened like 3 weeks ago, it took them a few days. So obviously, that's something we're going to be watching and waiting. But I thought this was a very key point to kind of talk about. When we talk about health, a lot of times we focus on the end result, right? The disease processes. And sometimes we go with causes. Sometimes we say, all right, it's the obesity, it's the family history, it's the smoking. But a lot of times we don't talk about how just the environment around us plays such a significant role. Like think about, outside of these trade issues, think about Flint, Michigan. Think about the contaminated water that went down in Flint, Michigan. And for those who may not know, it's still bad. In fact, Flint, Michigan, just like as I speak, just got off a boiled water watch. The same thing that happened in Jackson, right? So even as a person who may be thinking, man, I want to be the best that I can be, I want to be as healthy as I can be, there are so many other factors out there that are sometimes out of your control, right? We're going to talk about a few of these factors today. Yeah, USA is at war. It's definitely a problem of sex, right? So let's talk about one, right? So I want to focus on, USA. Let me highlight this. Again, please feel free to comment. We love to highlight the comments. Good old USA can't get water right. We can't, unfortunately, in this country, we can't get a lot of things right. We can't get our water right. We can't get our air right. We can't get our soil right. There's a lot of things we can't get right. And let me tell you something. I was in Jamaica. I was in Jamaica around in December, and I'm not a big juice drinker, but I went to Jamaica and like I had some pineapple juice, and I swear it was like the best pineapple juice I ever tasted in my life. And I automatically start thinking to myself, like, man, like what is happening in this country here where the pineapple juice is like the best thing I ever tasted that's not happening in the United States? And we're definitely going to touch on some aspects there, right? So first and foremost, air pollution. Let's talk about how bad we are in regards to kind of air pollution. More importantly, how significant it is to the everyday life that we live as a healthcare professional, how that's something that I need to always be wary of in regards to like diseases. Because again, a lot of times you may come to me, you're short of breath. You may come to me, you have this cough, especially for kids who are dealing with asthma and COPD and all these other factors there. You may come with me at these end results, but I have to start thinking, okay, is this something that is outside, right? Oh, yes. Oh, shout out, Lila. I'm highlighting a second. Is this something that is outside of our purview as far as what's causing these end results? We know the end diseases in regards to air pollution. We know asthma. We know COPD. Even the end stage effects of like cancer. We know those end stage issues. But if we start backtracking and start thinking, man, is there something that could be leading to these end results? Like that is where our minds get to racing. And I've said it before, I have a public health degree. So I don't have like my mind, I don't have the ability to only focus on the disease process and not necessarily think about other factors that likely led to it, right? So I want to highlight Leila, right? And I apologize if I'm saying your name incorrectly. She notes, and the racial divides of impact of poor air quality. So even if we can say, all right, in this certain area, we know the air isn't as great. We know that there are structural, environmental, systemic factors associating with the fact that your air might be better than mine. Like, think about that. Like, there are environmental, systemic, governmental, historical reasons why the air you breathe is better than mine. And if the air you breathe is going to be better than mine, guess what? I am likely going to have more diseases in regards to that poor air quality that I'm breathing in. I'm likely going to have more issues, downwind effects that may not affect me when I'm a child, may not affect me when I'm on my teenage years, may not be something that I don't see till I'm like older. Like, how many of you, right, in the chat, right, how many of you have seen these like lawyer commercials where they're talking about like mesothelioma and have you ever lived in here and have like these lawyers don't play. Like, these lawyers will go back. They'll go back 20 years. They'll go back 30 years. They'll go back 40 years and think like, hey, you know, if you were living in this area here, this may be a problem. Like, this may be an issue. And guess what? We want to sue because of that issue. Like, I saw I saw one or something. I just saw one about some military base, Lake Camp Jejune, maybe. I probably apologize if I'm saying it wrong for the military folks. And like the lawyers, I'm in Florida, so seeing commercials about lawsuits don't even like shock me. But they were talking about how, hey, like if you were in this, you know, army base at this time frame and you got cancer right now, the water was bad. And we'll talk a little bit about water later on today. The water was bad. And the water may have caused you to have cancer 30, 40 years later. So again, a lot of times there are risk factors, especially if you're a healthcare professional and you're asking your questions, you're trying to figure out, hey, what is wrong with the person in front of me? If you don't account for the environmental effects of the person in front of you, you're doing a half job. You really just is. These are some issues. Again, I talked about asthma. I talked about COPD. There are some studies now out of the NIH that talk about how cognitive issues in terms of memory loss, in terms of dementia, can be a factor of long-standing poor air supply. again, like I'm having trouble remembering when I'm 30, 40, 50, 60 years old because of the bad air supply that I had no choice, but it was just because of where I live. It was because of where my address was located. It was because of the buildings I happen to live in. Like, these are just some issues of concerns that I think is, again, I think it gets kind of overshadowed, especially here in this country. Because obviously, we got a lot of positive things going on for this country, but here in this country, I don't think we talk a lot about how detrimental the environment and the environmental effects play in our health, right? Like, the World Health Organization has a quote, and I want to make sure because I was shocked when I read this. Climate change is the biggest health detriment facing humanity. So think about that. The World Health Organization feels that climate change will be the biggest detriment to our health. So if that is not a ringing alarm, I don't know what is, right? So that's that, yeah, we talked about it. So that's air pollution. And again, there's some things that what you can do. What can we do as far as air pollution? What can we do to improve it? Lots of different things, right? But a lot of things that are out of our preview. I would love to be like, oh, hey, you know what? Why don't you just move out of that apartment building? Like, why don't you just move out of the apartment building and go to somewhere where it's clean? But how many people can do that? How many people can just get up and move to a better environment? Not too many, especially, the people I take care of. When I talk about, in fact, I just read an article, again, here in South Florida, how millennials and, people within the job market are having a hard time finding places to stay just because they're being priced out. So these are people who have good jobs, who are making good money, and even they are having problems finding a place to stay. How can I tell the patient in front of me, hey, yeah, I know that building that you live in, yeah, the air quality isn't the best. The vents don't get changed. The ventilation system's terrible. And you heard a lot about the ventilation systems, especially over this past couple of years with the pandemic and with COVID. Now, one of the biggest issues that was, I don't want to say discovered, but more highlighted again with COVID was that schools, buildings, apartment places that had poor ventilation, guess what? Had higher rates of COVID transmission. Like, that was just clear as day. So, and it was something that we've been knew about, because when we talk about patients with asthma, COPD, issues with lung disease, guess what? Those same areas were still being affected. So it's just one of those things where, yes, COVID highlighted a dark spot that's always been there. So, yeah, I would love to say, yeah, just get up and move. But we know that there are structural reasons. We know that there are racial reasons why you might not be able to move. There's socioeconomic reasons why you just may not be able to move. You may not be able to get an entire new air filtration system in your building, right? Depending how old your building is, right? Like, it's concerning, but it is something that we have to keep talking about. Like, we see trains derail. We should not be able to go about our day, right? We should not be able to just go about our day knowing that a train has derailed, and guess what? Chemicals are now in the air, in the water, in the soil. Like, that's something that should be very concerning. And y'all know me, especially those who follow me. I'm not the alarmist here, right? I'm not one, because I've seen, unfortunately, there's always another side who tries to make it super bleak. I'm not the one. I saw a quote that people were calling it Chernobyl number 2. No. Let's hold our horses. Let's not go crazy, but let's also not downplay how detrimental it is to have an issue where, guess what? Residents have to leave a town because the air that they're breathing isn't safe. They have to leave a town because the water that they have access to is not safe. Like, that's an issue there, right? Let's get to some comments. I don't want to go too far before we go there. Larry. I'm not sure what's going on with Larry. Larry Lee. Whenever they mention Biden, I already know. I already know. That's too funny. Let's see here. Let's say, all right, come here and inhale some burnt plastic. Oh, so I think Larry may stay in like a different place, right? And again, let's not, because I think I see where Larry's going. We're not here to do the the Olympics of the corrupt environments and the Olympics of the corrupt pollution. We're not. That's not the Olympic. In fact, that's not a race that I want to even join. I don't want to have to be comparing. Oh my God, your air pollution is much worse than our air pollution. Your water pollution is much worse. Like that. We're hoping, right? I'm hoping of sane mind that we are not at the point where we are actually arguing, hey, your pollution is better than mine, so you can't complain. We should all, I would hope, be extremely upset that our air pollutions are terrible. Like I would hope. And again, well, I'm not sure what's going on, but I would hope it gets to that point. Let's see here. I can take care of that. I can do that. Oh, perfect. All right, man, we got him. We got him out of here. That's too funny. So let's talk. So we've talked about air pollution, water. Water's a big one as well too. And again, I mentioned it. I gave a little preview in the beginning. Flint, Michigan. You guys, I hope, should know about Flint, Michigan. Is just coming off a boiled water watch in the year 2023. So even though it's not all over all of these news outlets, Flint, Michigan is still going through it. And that was as publicized as can be. Just like when you think about how Jackson, Mississippi, how that was publicized, Flint, Michigan was as publicized as they can be. And they were, and still in 2023, they're still dealing with boiled water watches. Like this, again, is a problem. And World Health Organization, again, I love to quote them, over 2 billion with a B, y'all. Over 2 billion people with a B drink from water from contaminated sources in the world. 2 billion. Water pollution and water quality, again, is going to be racing up the rates of public health issues that we are going to have to deal with. Like, again, I think a lot of us, especially if you don't reside in Jackson, Mississippi, you don't reside in the Flint, Michigan. And again, I'm purposely mentioning United States, cities in the United States, because I don't want y'all to think that, this is something that only happens in developed countries. Because again, especially if you travel, for a lot of many parts in this country is just as undeveloped as parts outside of this country. A lot of us take for granted that we can go to a faucet. Like I got my water right here. A lot of us take for granted that we can go for a faucet, turn it on, and drink the water from there with no issues or concerns whatsoever. If you are in an area where that water is contaminated, guess what you have to worry about? You have to worry about severe diarrhea. You have to worry about cholera. You have to worry about typhoid. I made a video on this a couple months ago about polio, especially in New York. I forget which city it was, that they were finding trace amounts of polio in the water because so many people were unvaccinated in that certain area of New York state. Like, these are diseases that chill in the water. And for factors here, GI-related issues, reproductive issues, cardiac, kidney-related issues, all are a problem in regards to our water supply. It's one of the reasons why I know before we had to kick Larry out, he kind of mentioned the plastics, right? We know about the plastics. We know about the water. There are a lot of bacterial bugs that just live in the water that, because, again, if depending on where you live at, it's not an issue concern because that gets filtered out and cleaned up before it gets to your sink. But for many people, they don't have that filter system. Many people have to take a bath from the same source of water that they have to drink. And they don't got an option to oh, no, I'm not drinking out of that. I'm going to go down. No, they don't have that option. And I think if COVID showed us one thing, it showed us that we, from a worldwide perspective, are very, very connected. So I don't want us, again, to think that, it happens in those countries, especially if you're watching this from the United States. This is not a thing that just happens in those countries. This is the thing that is happening currently here in the United States and multiple places within the country of concern. Regards. Let me see here. Yeah, so let me see that face. Good. Thanks for me. Oh, so so this from Linda just kind of mentions, and this kind of plays off the water supply related issue. Dead fish means the water is no good and expect people to live there and drink it. And when we talk about the train derailment that happened in Ohio, not the one in Michigan today, but the one that happened in Ohio, we know that a significant population of fish died. Gone, out of there, right? Because of the chemicals that were able to leach into the water from the trail derailment. So, yeah, think about if you, depending, again, I'm not from that East Palestine, Ohio, but imagine if you used to fish there to eat. Like, imagine if that used to be how you ate. Or just get away. Like, let's say you're just having a good old time. Hey, let's go get some fishing. You can't even do that because the fish are dead. Like, imagine if you garden in that area, and now you can't even trust the soil of the food you're gardening in because some chemicals may have caused a problem. And yes, it's still early, and what we've seen, and obviously what the lawyers have seen, is that they have no problem waiting out the side effects. I know typically when I talk to those anti-vaxxers, they're always talking about like, oh my God, just wait until something happens. Like, when we talk about these chemicals, we're pretty sure that if you get them in toxic related amounts over time, may not be at one dose, but over time, that is something you'll have to definitely worry about. I'm not sure if major. I feel like a lot of news stations have covered it. As far as the Ohio. Yes. Oh, yeah. So sure, lovely. Let me make sure I'm following her. I didn't hit that follow button before because I don't want to forget. Rockland County. So we were kind of mentioning the polio, because a lot of people are unvaccinated, was being found in the water supply. So your water is not safe. And again, I'm not here, y'all, just remember, I'm not here to make it seem like you can't breathe the air that you breathe and you can't drink the water that you drink. I'm not here to scare you into thinking that. I just want us to be extremely conscious of just how many different things can affect our personal health care. Things that we don't have nothing to deal with. Like, we don't have nothing to deal with that water supply, but guess what? That water can kill us. We have nothing to do with the air supply, but guess what? That air supply can kill us. We from an environmental standpoint, we know that there are people who are living in buildings with lead paint all over them. We know people who are living in buildings with asbestos all through the ceilings, the roof. Like, that is the reality for a lot of people, even now to this day in this country. So when I tell you that the environmental problems that are, again, like, I'm not an environmentalist, but as a healthcare professional and one who tends to see, unfortunately, I tend to see the end stage effects. I want us to make sure that we're thinking about other causes that aren't so common. Like, it's easy to say cigarette smoking. Okay, yep, that's probably what's causing asthma and COPD. But imagine if the reason why you have bad asthma is because the place you put your head in has poor ventilation, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. Right? Like, I think that's what's probably telling more than anything else. I like Linda. Let's highlight Linda again. Linda says, exactly, America is getting real funky because the profit before the people. Oh, yeah. And I think this is such a telling point, and I've mentioned this before, how it's extremely difficult, even as a healthcare professional who I'm in the business of healthcare, because that's what it is a business of healthcare. And I understand that the business of healthcare makes a lot of money when y'all are sick. And I'm not saying anything blasphemous. I'm not saying anything that's untrue. I'm just saying I'm in a business that makes a lot of money when you are sick. When I was an outpatient doctor, I used to talk about how, man, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to bankrupt the hospital next to me because I'm trying to take care of my patients so well that they never have to go to the hospital because I'm catching everything early. So there's never any heart attacks that happen because their blood pressure wasn't controlled. There's never any strokes that were happened because they weren't following their diabetes. They never have to go on dialysis because I made sure their blood pressure and that was always my thought process. But like I am key to the fact that the business that I reside in, the business that I work in, does extremely well when you guys aren't doing well. Like and that's the the catch-22 that I typically have to deal with, especially as a healthcare professional. Linda says, I know we have a shortage of doctors now and overworked people in the medical profession we need. Linda, let me tell you something. We've always had a shortage. I think the shortage has been, the writing has been on the wall for a while. But what happened with COVID is that timeline got sped up. That timeline, whether it was because the professionals were dying, or they were like, you know what? I'm not going through another pandemic. I'm not going through the stress of being a healthcare professional under these standards again. I'm out of here. I'm just, like me personally, I am about a little over a decade out of medical school, right? A little bit over about 12 years out of medical school. And the amount of colleagues who are my age, who are already on career number 2, who are already on like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. The amount of people who are like, yeah, that medicine thing is great, but I need to figure out a different way to provide for my family. So many of us, from a professional standpoint, especially during COVID, we're making sure our wills were on point. Like me personally, I was making sure, I was like, hey, you know what? Let me make sure my will is doing what my will needs to do and make sure everything is aligned just in case, because I recognized I was going into a place where, you know what? Like I'm going to the fire, right? You're saying COVID's over there? I'm running to COVID. So yeah, like definitely when you talk about how the healthcare professionals are overworked, overstressed, but understand that we still got to take care of the people we need to take care of. I think that's why it's so important. So when I see events like this, right, and I see like, all right, train derailment, like, oh my God, they had to evacuate, my mind is automatically wondering like, oh, okay, all right, that might be an issue. And it might be an issue, not necessarily that we see in the next year or 2, but it may be an issue that we see in the next 5 or 10. So, and it's a good segue because, hey, guess what? We got other issues as well. Like, yes, I know the flavor of the day is train wrecks and environmental spilling and everything else. But if we move forward, like we still got water issues. I kind of talked, we still got the water supply issues, right? So we still got a lot of problems there, right? And we kind of mentioned already, we talked about just environmental issues, old buildings. We talked about lead paint, mercury, what else? Oh, pesticides. That's a whole nother endeavor as well. So that's why when I go back and I think about just like, again, when I was in Jamaica and I had that juice and I'm like, man, like, what is it that makes this juice so much better than any juice I drink? You start having to try to like juggle all of these different factors here in that regards. Let's see. Oh, Angelica, I appreciate you. Oh, Millie, hey, Millie, how you doing? Yes, indeed. I'm day share. Oh, see, Lisa mentions again. So we have another, I think I'm assuming that's a water advisory in Massachusetts. Like this, it's so common. I don't think for most of it, one, because it doesn't typically catch the fanfare of the news cycle. But a lot of it, again, I hate to be hyperbole. A lot of this country is a natural disaster away from looking like how Jackson was. A natural disaster away from looking how Flint is right now. If you actually start saying like, hey, you know what? I want this water supply in South Florida is up to date. Like, I think a lot of us would be very concerned. Which is why, especially, as we lead off, which is why you see so many people start trying to say like, hey, you know what? I just need to do for me, right? I need to make my own food, right? I need to, have my own soil. They start doing it because they start recognizing like, hey, if I leave it up to the city that I'm in, the state that I'm in, that like I may be in trouble. And I've had countless of patients who, when they did have the opportunity to just kind of get up and go somewhere, right, and leave that environment, all of a sudden, a lot of their health issues and concerns that they had just kind of like, kind of went away. Like, oh, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. So that's, again, is extremely telling for us, right, when we talk about when we talk about what we can do, just, our personal, again, we have to be very, very cautious, but we have to just more diligent on how we process things, right? More diligent on, where we're getting our food, where we're getting our drinking water. If you can, again, I want to speak for people, right? But if you can, making sure you can get as much filters as possible. I like to get a filter on top of the filter if needed be, right? Because I just want to make sure that the water I'm drinking is okay. Some of us have refrigerators that have, water filters in there. I'm big on making sure I change that water filter early, and then I give it a few days before I start drinking it again. And I think that's probably, especially if you have those types of refrigerators, the best. I mean, if you just needed something to like, whoa, kind of like, really shock you, like look at what the water looks like when it's unfiltered. Just coming out the refrigerator. Just look at what that water looks like when it's unfiltered and how many times it kind of has to chug along before it kind of clears out everything, right? Like, I think it's, there for sure. Oh, Linda started it, right? So Linda says, I feel for the people in Flint. Those factors put there on purpose. Oh, yeah. And again, it's one of those things where we kind of mentioned early where when you have financial, right, issues at play, and people recognize like, hey, I can put these types of factories here because I understand that even if something goes awfully bad, the residents that it affects, you know what? I won't get in as much trouble. Like, let's say that. I won't get in as much trouble if something goes down and those residents are affected. Versus if I put that same factory and I had that same issue in another part of the city in the same state, oh, it'd be kind of hell to pay. So yeah, it's extremely tough. And what's unfortunate is that it's going to cost money to get us up to code, to get us up to date. And when you, especially if you guys kind of watch kind of some of the political discourse here, they can't even agree that something is off. So imagine seeing how Flint is and still having people not being able to agree that that's something we should take care of. like that's just, yeah, it's a wild. Well, let's see here. Oh yeah, I love this here. So Leela talked about how making sure that the filters we are getting and the contaminants in the area like need to match, right? You don't want to just be getting filters, especially with the way e-commerce happens, that you can just order something online. You want to make sure you're getting filters that can kind of take care of what you may have to deal with. So that's a very good point here. Oh, woo. See, Millie, I love it, Millie. So Millie said, did you notice that no reps of that company came to the town hall meeting in Ohio? Nope. And guess what? The train that derailed today is the same company. Now, we are not here we are not here to be conspiracy theorists, but like, imagine the odds that your company has 2 trail derailments in less than a month. 2 of them in less than a month. And for those who may not remember, another train derailed today in Michigan. For those who remember, when the train workers went on strike, a lot of them went on strike because of, safety conditions. Obviously pay was a big one, but safety conditions was a big one. Oh, yeah, I don't think they showed up good because then they had to come in full PPE. Yeah, no, it's scary, right? It's scary, and you'd be surprised that I'm pretty sure in some boardroom or some email or some message, string somewhere, someone was like, "Hey, you know what? The brakes on that type of train, I don't know about that one." Right? Like, and people made the decision to say, "Hey, you know what? We're going to rock out with this equipment here until we can't." Like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to rock out with it. And now they can't. So you're going to see a lot of eyes looking, especially because it's the same company, and saying, "Hey, you don't got two trains that derailed. We need to see what's else going on with the rest of your trains here." So I fully expect something to really go down in the next month or so because of it. Oh, yeah. So President Biden talked about infrastructure. Yeah, that's why it was so important. I think a lot of people really scuffed at it as far as the push to try to improve our infrastructure. But I think a lot of it just really stems from the fact that if you live in a metropolitan type area, a big city, you don't really recognize just how those rural parts are. Like, it doesn't even like cross your mind how third world-ish those cities in your state that you're living in right now are in regards to their infrastructure, their bridges, their water supply, their pipes, all like, because, but again, a lot of times we're comfortable because we're in our big city. The water's clean. I can pay for some filters. I can, my air is pretty good. Like, so we definitely, I think as a whole, America as a whole underestimate, and I would love to, I'm pretty sure there's a survey on this. I would love to see like a survey of people who wonder just how bad our country is in regards to its infrastructure. Like, I don't think I'd be surprised, but I think a lot of people think that we're much better off than other parts of the world. Oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, no, yeah. Heck, Erica mentioned it, right? So she said, these company heads really decide how many deaths are worth the profit. Oh, yeah. I think that's such an important detail again, and I'll speak on it from a medicine perspective, right? And especially I know the anti-vaxxers like, yes, I knew it. I'm pretty sure you have some of these pharmaceutical companies, some of these machinery companies who look at it and say like, hey, all right, yeah, that may be a structural deficit, but you know what? I think we could probably afford the lawsuits that occur, right? Like, they're already in their mind possibly calculating that. Again, I can't prove it to be sure. That's maybe the conspiracy theory mind, little bit of mind in me. I got a little bit, but like, I think that's the case, right? I think a lot of people understand that, like, hey, even if this goes bad, we can afford to deal with all of the lawsuits. In fact, that same company, I forget the name of the company, but that company whose train derailed, they're already offering the residents $1,000 to go get some health checkups. Like, oh, here's $1,000. Go get health checkups. Like, we got you. And of course, some people are like, nah, I don't want that $1,000 because if I got to sue you in 10 to 20 years, like, you're not going to hold me to that little $1,000 that you done gave me. Oh, yeah. Doesn't drink the water very short. Let's see. Can you imagine how long it's been? Have you seen the dates that they have made them overdue? I have not, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I think, especially if you're, especially again, when, I always listen to the workers. In most of these types of disputes, right, when the workers start complaining of hazardous conditions, when they start, again, I'll bring it back to my healthcare folks. When my nurses start saying, hey, I'm overworked, I got too many patients. When my CNAs are like, hey, I don't have time to be doing this, and that. When my respiratory therapists, when they start like mentioning and saying, hey, I see a problem, I'm right with them. I'm like, yeah, all right. If my team is saying that that's a problem, then I got to rock with them. Like, no, I don't think that, they just don't want to work. No. I'm pretty sure like they're overworked. And I'm pretty sure someone on the C-suite has decided, hey, you know what? If we stretch out this nurse and make them take, 7 patients instead of 6 patients, at the end of the year, we save, 1,000 nursing. Again, I'm just making up work. But like, I think that's the process that occurs. So I think it's extremely important when we see that our like our country, our infrastructure is doo-doo. Now again, as a whole, right, we may on average be better than a lot of our other countries. And like, before we booted off Larry, he was kind of mentioning like, oh, well, the Korea, like, hey, like I'm not here again. This is not a game we should be trying to play, right? This is not a game we should be trying to win. Which company which country pollutes the less? That's not a game we should be really trying to win. We should all be in an uproar when over 2 billion people don't have adequate drinking water, and that number is just going to continue to increase. Like, we should all be in uproar when people are dying of diarrhea. Right? There's people in this world that die due to diarrhea and severe dehydration because the water they drink is the same water that they have to do their toiletries in, right? Like, that's what it is. Oh, that's too funny. So the company has already started blaming COVID for issues by the chemicals. Oh, y'all already know that they're probably gonna be blaming COVID for everything, probably for the next half decade. Like, I think that's going to be extremely common to see. It's either going to be COVID, it's either going to be the restrictions due to COVID, the lockdowns due to COVID, the vaccines because of they're going to be finding a way to funnel the blame back to COVID for a good amount of time. And again, it just is what it is. There's nothing you can really do argue about that. Let's see here. Diabetes, being an eat fruit, oh, that's what. So I love this. Is that this guy was like, we should be hanging out and eating fruit. What do you mean I can't drink water? Yeah, no. It's it's such a wild time. It's such a wild time right now. And again, especially if you're on TikTok, you'll see the people who have their own water collection systems, who are, doing the vertical gardening and all these other things there. There are a lot. And again, when I see their TikToks, I don't look at them like, oh, well, they're wilding out here. I'm like, hey, you know what? They might know a little bit more, right, than what we know, or they just may be aware. Because I think especially in this country here, I think if we were aware of just how bad, some of our infrastructure is across this country, we'd probably go in an uproar. But fortunately for a lot of people, they're just not aware of it. So they can't go in the uproar. They can't fight. They can't go yell and scream and, try to go after somebody because of it. Oh yeah. COVID is always real to someone. Once they have something to blame, especially those on the other team, the anti-vax team, anti-COVID, anti-vax, or whatever they want to say. Once they have a good culprit to blame COVID that benefits them, their team COVID all the way. Oh yeah. Linda's telling the truth here, right? So major corporations and the politicians transfer monies back and forth to each other. Oh yeah, it's one of those things. And again, do I think this train company is gonna be like bankrupt, right? Because of it? No, right? It's because I'm pretty sure that train company, along with its lobbyists, pay a lot of money to make sure that, when things like this happen, they are protected. So yes, will they get sued? Now, fortunately, with today's train derailment and the derailment of earlier this month, no one was affected. Like, no one died. So fortunately, right? We are knocking on wood. But if you ask me, hey, Dr. Barry, how much would you bet? Like, would you bet some money that those chemicals that were all in the air are now in the water or over there in the soil over there is not going to cause any problems downwind? Like, that's not a bet I'm taking. Like, I can't do it. I love this comment here, right? What side of that? Lawsuit settlements rarely. Yeah, they rarely do. Especially for those who live and have to deal with the chronic issues and problems for the rest of their life. Like, the money that they're going to get from the settlement ain't going to be enough. And again, these companies know that. I'm pretty sure they got mathematicians. They understand that, like, we might have to pay a couple billion out this year, but give us about a year or two. We'll make that back. Like, that won't be an issue, that we'll have to deal with. Let's see here. All right, I don't see too many other questions. Oh, good. We got just under an hour, which we love. All right, guys. I'm about to get up out of here. Right. That is my rendition of the environment trying to kill us and how we need to just be a little bit more wary, a little bit more cautious. We just need to educate ourselves on the importance of protecting ourselves in many different ways, whether it be environmental, whether it be via the water, whether it be via the air supply. We got a lot of ways that the environment can cause some problems to us. We just need to make sure that we avoid them all, right? So y'all be blessed. Have a great night.